Hi loves, this is Ro. Welcome back to my channel. I have a very special guest for you today. His name is Pepe and he was just sentenced to a few years in federal prison. He was facing a lot longer. Thank God he was sentenced to less time. I'll let him tell the story. I just wanted to come in and do this intro. I apologize to him and I apologize to you guys. I do not like to do professional interviews from the car. What happened was I was driving out to visit Adam unexpected. I was not expecting to go this weekend. And I thankfully was able to get a hotel room last minute and head out there. And I left in plenty of time to do this interview, but real life gets in the way and the drive took me a lot longer than I had anticipated. So I had to pull over in a parking lot. I had to take the call. He's such a positive person. He was completely fine with it. He said we could reschedule. I didn't want to do that to him. I did not want to delay this. I wanted you guys to see it. He's such a great guy. He's such a positive influence. And I don't want to waste any time with a further introduction. We will just get right into it. Make sure that you guys like this video. Make sure if you're not subscribed, please do so. It means so much to me to be able to share my life and to support you. And in the comments below, we say it throughout the video, but please, please, please leave some love for Pepe as he embarks on his prison sentence on this next chapter, this short chapter, well, not too short. I mean, he's got a decent amount of time, but as he embarks on that in his life, and give him, if you have a loved one who's incarcerated, your tips for him to take into that with his partner.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to my channel. I have a very special guest today. His name is Pepe. I don't want to say too much about you. I want you to do the introduction yourself. So we met because you actually have a podcast that I would love for you to talk about when you introduce yourself, and we'll leave all the links to everything below as well. But that's how we met, because I was a guest on your podcast and we waited a while for us to do this video. So why don't you tell us who you are, and then that'll be obvious why we waited, and then we can go from there.
Sure. So my name is Pepe. That's my nickname. Most people know me as that. My real name's Scott. And yeah, a while back, it's been about 2.5 years now since I was arrested on marijuana conspiracy charges. And obviously it led me into the criminal justice system. I'm dealing with a federal case, so I'm facing federal time. And when I was first arrested, I was facing 5 to 40 years. And as time went on, people in the case cooperated, more evidence came out, and the charges were increased to a 10 years to life sentence with a 10-year mandatory minimum. And obviously this was all very life-changing and dramatic for me, for my partner, for my children. And I did my best to respond in the best way I could, and for myself, for my children, for my partner, but I also wanted to help other people in similar situations. So you mentioned the podcast. It's why I started a podcast. It's not released yet, but I've been documenting my story, interviewing other people who've been to prison and came out successfully. I've interviewed you and other folks who have relationships with folks in prison. And, I'm just really being as honest and open as I could with my story to provide the best information and help I could to other folks who might be going through something that's similar.
Awesome. And one thing that I think you have been you're so amazing at so many things, but one thing since I've met you that you've been so good at has been preparing for release since before you were even sentenced, something that I've always preached to my community. And I know my friend Justin Perperny from White Collar Advice, who I work with a lot, always talks about preparing for release since the day you went inside. But I think you took that and you won the gold medal in that, because before you were even sentenced. So what kind of brought you to doing that? How have you been preparing? What have you been doing? And how have you been staying so positive in doing all of that before you were even sentenced?
Yeah, well, I don't want to make it sound like it's easy, because it wasn't. And I was definitely scared. I've done a lot, and I'm proud of what I've done, but it was not an easy task. One of the things, interestingly, that kind of really got me motivated on that path of trying to prepare for my release now was an interaction with my probation officer. I had just kind of mentioned that, oh, I'm interested in like being a coach, a life coach or a health coach in the future. But I never went to school for that, and I wanted to. And I was concerned, though, if I started schooling now, that I would be sentenced and wind up in prison before I finished the schooling program. And she just made an offhanded comment, kind of like, you shouldn't really give up on your dreams ever. And I kind of brushed it aside at the moment, but then I actually reached back out to her and I said, I'm taking serious what you said, and I do want to pursue this, but I'm afraid that I won't have time. And she said, if you got sentenced before your schooling was done, I would actually request that the judge allows you to finish your school. And that did encourage me to take, a big step, which was to enter into a 1-year schooling program to be a certified life coach and health coach. And I had no idea how long I had left before I'd be serving time. So it was a big move for me to do that. That was one of the things. And then the second was, I was dealing with so much uncertainty and fear. And I really wanted to talk to other people who've been through this on several levels. One, people who've been to prison themselves. And then two, people who were in relationship with people in prison, because I wanted to understand what I was going to be entering into, and I wanted to understand the best ways to maintain my relationship with my partner. So I figured I'd start calling people and just talking to them. And I did it a few times, but I'm like, this is such a good way to get information. I should probably record these conversations and create a podcast out of it. So I've done that, and I've got about probably 20, 25 episodes of a podcast recorded already, where either I'm documenting my story on half and the other half is talking to other people. And as far as staying motivated, that's wasn't easy in the beginning. I was depressed. I was, scared. I wasn't really doing much at all. I was like laying in bed, binge watching horrible prison shows on Netflix, which I don't recommend doing. But, eventually I just realized I really need to show up for my children and for my partner. I wanted my children and my partner, her, to have the best experience that they could during all this. I didn't want them to suffer any more than necessary. And I think if I kind of just gave up and was defeated and, not showing up for them, it would have made this harder on everyone else that was around me. So that was a lot of my motivation, was my children and my relationship with my partner.
That's amazing. And most people that watch my channel have a loved one who's incarcerated. And I think that that's a lesson for both partners in the relationship, because that's exactly what I did. That's exactly why I started my channel. That's exactly why I started Strong Prison Wives and Families. And I once heard, and we're like tracking all the way with the life coaching and all that stuff. That is all me all the way too. And one thing I learned was take your struggles and get strength out of them and make them fuel your passion. And if you could use it to help other people, then it almost kind of gives a little bit of a purpose to that struggle. So I love that you're doing that. And you had mentioned your kids. And one time we spoke and you told me something that you were doing with your kids to prepare for prison. And I'm getting chills just talking about it. Can you talk a little bit more about that? Because I thought it was so genius and something that we could do too.
Absolutely. Can I ask you, am I able to say a bad word on here?
Yes.
Okay. So I want to tell a little story before I jump into what you're referring to. And I call this my box of shit story. My kids have 4 cats, and they have their chores around the house. And one of them is to take care of the cat's litter box. And no one likes doing that chore. And they always try and switch out of it whose chore it is. And one day they switched and they didn't really talk to their mom about it. And whoever switched ended up not doing it. And it just wasn't getting done. And there was this box of shit in the corner that was just not being paid attention to. And then people just started avoiding that area of the house and avoiding that room. And, at one point I realized, this is kind of early on in my situation, what I was facing, my impending incarceration. I kind of created this similar situation where I kind of created this box of shit and we weren't really talking about it. It was like this thing that was just there in a corner that no one really wanted to go near. No one wanted to touch it. No one wanted to deal with it in the beginning. And it was hard, it's a hard thing for kids. I mean, thankfully, most of my kids are older, but I do have, my youngest is 11, and she was 10 at the time. So, I just realized that we need to start approaching this and talking about it, just like they needed to start cleaning up the litter box before it just gets out of control. So one of the things I thought that we could do as a family, me and my kids and my girlfriend, we would all go out to eat for pizza every Thursday at some of the best pizza places in the state. And I'm in Connecticut, and we're known for having some rather good pizza places. So we kind of picked 7 of the best pizza restaurants around. And for 7 weeks, every Thursday, we would go out, we'd sit down and have pizza, and we'd have a conversation about what was happening, the situation we were facing. And it wouldn't always be a heavy, deep conversation, but it was just to get things out and get this flow of communication around what was going on. And then to make it a little fun for the kids, I printed up scoring sheets for rating the pizza that rated everything from the crust to the sauce to the cheese to the toppings. So it was a fun event that everyone got together for every Thursday. We kind of went out together. We would listen to music on the car rides home. And, it just really helped ease into a place where we could start talking about this as a family.
I love that so much. And I guarantee this is going to become one of my most watched videos, because anytime I see somebody avoiding, I'm going to send a link and be like, go listen to the box of shit story.
Yeah.
That's such a great analogy, such a great metaphor. I live for that kind of stuff. I love it. And I just love how you approached it head on with the kids, because so many people lie to their kids about this, and we don't give children enough credit for being so much smarter than we think that they are. And they know when we're lying. And what are you going to say? Daddy's at, I don't know, wherever. They need to know. It needs to be age appropriate, but they need to talk about it. And I love that you took that fear out of it and you were there to talk through it with them. And so I want to ask a question that I didn't prepare you for. I'm sorry, but as I'm talking, it's coming up. And we could edit it out if it gets uncomfortable. But majority of the people that are watching this don't have time to prepare before. And I can imagine it from your perspective being almost a blessing and a curse at the same time. So walk me through what it feels like with this hanging over your head every single day, knowing that you have a countdown, so you have to be gone for a long time.
Yeah, in the beginning, I already referenced that a little bit. I was depressed. I gave up on trying to do anything for at least a month, maybe a couple weeks. And then I eventually got a little better, but I still wasn't motivated in the beginning. It was really hard. I had no idea. Like, it felt like my life was over, essentially. It just felt like I couldn't move forward. And that was one of the most difficult times for me personally, was initially after my arrest. But as time went on, and like I said, I began to assign meaning to what I was going through. And then doing things like the podcast or the pizza in prison every Thursday, I started to see I was helping the people around me. And that really helped me feel empowered. And it definitely made me feel I was capable of moving through this with a purpose. So that definitely helped with eliminating some of that fear of this impending date that was coming. But that's, it's something that over time you get used to as well. This living in this state of like unknown limbo. It's really difficult at first, but you do get used to it. I mean, if there's anyone else out there right now who's going through this, I would say, one thing you have to remember is this might not sound true at the moment, but this all has an end date. Like, there's an end date to it. There's an end date to your pre-sentence period that you're in right now, whether it's pre-trial, and there's an end date, to this whole process for you. So that's really important to be reminded of that. That's something that I would tell myself quite regularly, and knowing there was an end date, that kind of goes back into a lot of the preparation I was doing to prepare for that end date.
I love that. It reminds me of this story that I was going to tell this morning and I never got a chance to get. I was going to tell it on Instagram, where I'm very athletic and I wanted to get in a workout before I drove 6 hours to where I'm going to visit Adam. That's, by the way, while I'm in the car, everybody, I apologize. It was just a rough drive. So I didn't make it in time before this interview. But I took the workout beforehand, and part of my workout, I wanted to do 200 double unders, which is 2 spins of a jump rope for every jump. It's really hard conditioning. And then I was going to taper 200, do a run, 150, do a run, 100, and then 50, and then be done. So I was trying to do the 200, which is pretty taxing, and everything was going wrong. It was just one of those days. I kept tripping over the rope. I kept hitting myself in the head. There were bugs around. It was just one of those days. And so I said to myself, you just got to get through 25 at a time, just 25 at a time, and then you can break. And next thing I know, the 200 were done. I didn't stop at 25, but I gave myself little countdowns. And that's how, what I got from what you were just saying, and that's how I get through this, is you just check. You're right. There's always an end date. There's always something that you could check off. So even for people that have really long or life or God forbid death row sentences, which we do have some people who watch this, there's always something that you can count down towards. There's always something you could check down to. You know, like I have a life sentence, but I'm always counting down to my next visit. And what can I do to better myself before I get there? So you are one of the most positive people I've ever met. And for everybody watching, this has to be like our 5th or 6th time talking. And every single time you have been just such a ray of sunshine, so positive. And you're not just doing it for the camera. Even before this interview, you just went through something today that was huge, life-changing thing. And you're like, but we could still do it, no problem. And here you are being so positive. And I listened to a podcast you did with somebody else, and I think it was like a men's empowerment type of thing. And you told a story about how your house burnt down, and you spun it so positive. Oh my gosh, you spun it so positive. I would love for you to share that story with the people watching this, because it's just a story of hope and finding strength within struggles.
Yeah, definitely. So, you know, I was facing 10 years to life at the time. And, you know, I'm thinking things probably can't get much worse than this. And then, you know, shortly after that, the apartment I was living in burned down, and I lost about 90% of everything I owned. And, you know, that was a really life-changing event for me as well. I think that and my arrest were, you know, which both happened within a 2-year time span. And, you know, a little side caveat to this was I was really worried about my stuff when I go to prison. Like, what am I going to do with all my stuff? And it was like kind of stressing me out quite a bit. So the fire kind of eased that worry for me, you know. It was like one bright side of that. It was like, you know what? I don't have to worry about my stuff anymore. So that was like one bright side to the fire. But another thing was I was really struggling with understanding who I was at this time. This was earlier on in my after my arrest, and you know, all these identities that I had. You know, I was running or helping run like a really large marijuana business. It was a multi-million-dollar marijuana business. Like, we had an airplane that they found full of marijuana. I was charged with more than like 2.5 tons of marijuana over a period of time. And that's what I've been doing for a couple of years. And that's who I was as far as my job, essentially. And that all just came to a crash one day. And then everything was so different. You know, obviously I didn't have that job. Obviously, even like who I was as a father began to change because I couldn't provide for my children the same way. My relationships with everyone seemed different, and I really didn't know who I was. And I was trying to let go of these old identities, and I was doing fairly good with it. But I think, you know, mostly I did let go, and the only thing really left that I was holding on to was just like my apartment, my stuff, everything there. It was like the last thing in my life that was connected to this old way of living. So when the apartment fire happened, it really pushed me into this territory of discovering who I am now and who I'm becoming. And I think if the fire didn't happen, I mean, I would have probably still be struggling right now to move out of these old identities. It really kind of opened up into a new territory for me. And it's like the idea of the phoenix that kind of comes and, you know, and it's burning, but out of that, you know, there's the birth of a new thing. And definitely the fire kind of helped me find, the new person that I have become and still becoming.
Could it be any more literal of the phoenix and coming out of? That's just incredible. Your attitude and your perspective on life are just, you're going to be successful no matter what you do. One time I heard somebody talking, and not that I'm glorifying what you did, not that I'm glamorizing what you did by any means. We all know that illegal activity is wrong. Everybody here knows that. But somebody that could be that successful. I heard this author talking. He's like, I am no different from somebody who sells drugs. We're both entrepreneurs. We both run a business. So putting all of that energy and all of that positive now energy and that new focus into whatever endeavors you choose to move forward with, you're going to be insanely successful. And I hope everyone can take something from this, where you are making probably really good money and you probably had some very nice stuff and you're just like, that's okay. We're going to be fine. I love it. So let's move into, I know you have a partner, and I know that it has to be really difficult for her right now. So tell me a little bit about how you guys are doing with that, how you're adjusting, how she's adjusting to this next phase of your life.
Yeah, the adjustment, I mean, it's an ongoing process. And it's been about 2.5 years since I was arrested. And I would like to say we made a lot of progress since then with learning how to deal with this in a relationship. We still have a lot of work to go, though, because this is such a monumental experience. And, neither of us have any idea what it's like to be in a relationship while one partner is incarcerated. But, just recently I was sentenced, and I found out I got 4 years and 10 months. So after my sentence, we tried to maybe make things a little more concise as to how we're going to manage the relationship moving forward. And we actually sat down and went over some questions together and wrote out the answers. And, for me, I'm planning to print this out and bring it with me, but I can give you, some of what I'm talking about. But for example, there was 2 basic questions that we asked, and they were pretty encompassing questions. But the first question was, what things must you have in order to feel as comfortable as possible in this situation and the relationship itself? And so we each made a list of what we think we're going to need while I'm incarcerated, to make the relationship work. And for me, I mean, it's a great thing to have this list from her, because I'm going to bring that with me and I can look at that every day. Okay, this is what she's saying she needs to be comfortable in the relationship, and this is how I can provide for her the best I could throughout my incarceration. And then the second part, the question is similar, but on the opposite end. And what are some things you must not have in order to feel comfortable in the relationship and under the new circumstances? And it's just, it's a very clear way of understanding what we can both find acceptable and not acceptable, and what our needs are in the relationship.
That's amazing. And I hope that everybody here watching this that has a loved one incarcerated does that exercise, because we always talk about how communication will get you through, and open and honest and boundaries and all that stuff, but actually putting pen to paper. I just literally learned this today listening to a book on audio driving 6 hours, where literally writing stuff out does something in your brain differently than texting or this kind of stuff, like talking. So I love that you did that. That's amazing. And for everybody watching this, I would love for you guys to leave comments of support and tips or whatever you want to tell Pepe and his partner for how they can get through this, because you've really been doing so much homework and studying all this since before you got sentenced, and we're all here to learn from and teach one another. And really quick side note, when you told me how long you had, you told me a month, and even though I've been doing this for so long, I calculated it 10 years and 4 months. So as you're talking, I'm like, oh, yes, that makes me so happy. I remember, I was like, are you okay? I didn't really think you were going to get that much time. So, whew, that's great. I mean, it's still 4 years and 10 months, but, well, I was relieved.
Yeah, no, I'm actually relieved with it too.
Okay,
you know what?
good.
I do want to mention one other thing with just regards to what we were writing down with the relationship stuff. There was this great quote, or I guess motto or quote, that I heard during an interview with a lady named Gabrielle Reese. She's I don't know, you might be familiar with her if you're into like the athletic stuff, but she was like a volleyball player and did a bunch of other stuff. She's married to Laird Hamilton, who's like a famous surfer. But she was talking about her relationship, and my partner and I, we wrote this quote down, and it's something that we agreed that we're both going to print up and have with us, and put it somewhere very visible. Me, when I'm in prison, I'm going to have it with me, and her here at home. But it was I don't have this all figured out. I will do my best today for her or him, and I will do my very best to be kind and loving today, one day at a time.
Oh, gold. That's gold. Yeah. I love that. Oh my gosh. That's incredible. I mean, what better way to kind of start closing down this video? Amazing. Amazing. I love that. You guys are so on point. You guys are you're going to make it through this because of your attitudes alone, because of your positive energy, and because you've been doing the work since before you got sentenced. I just can't stress that enough. And for people that are like, well, too late for me, it's been 5 years. It's never too late, but start doing the work now, because too many people just she'll sit with the covers over her head and she won't get anything done. She just wants to cross off days off the calendar. He'll sit at the poker tables or in front of the TVs and just kind of numb out on reality TV. And then you get out 10 years down the road, 4 years even down the road, 2 years down the road, and nothing changed. And so you can't understand why you're going right back to that same old life. So something has to change in order for you not to get stuck in that revolving door. Because when you come out, the strikes are already kind of stacked against you. So you guys, I know, are going to be successful. I have zero doubt throughout incarceration and afterwards. So what did I forget to ask you? What do you want to leave everybody with? I don't want to keep you for too long.
Well, I guess one thing I'll say is, with all the work I've been doing and everything I'm trying to do with my partner, I do feel pretty prepared, but I don't want anyone to think that it's easy. Like, I'm not saying it's easy, because it's definitely, I'm sure you've been dealing with this for a long time. It's definitely not easy, but it's worth putting in this energy and the time, especially, if your goal is to maintain the relationship, throughout this ordeal. So, like, it's not an easy thing to do, but I think it's better than the alternative, which is to either run and hide or not do anything.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not easy, but it's worth fighting for. And it's going to be rough in the beginning because it's going to be an adjustment for both of you. But the fact that you've laid this groundwork, and also the fact that you're armed with those quotes and the exercises you guys did, it'll help. It's not easy by any stretch of the imagination, and it'll never be easy. We don't want it to be easy, because it's got to be a little bit uncomfortable for all of us in this experience, myself included, to remember I never want to do this again. But it's so doable with a lot of work. And I know that to both of you, your relationship is worth fighting for. Just like everybody watching this, your relationship is worth that work, unless it's not. And then it's time to reevaluate it. But thank you so much. I can't thank you enough. When is your surrender day?
October 16th. And I actually just found out last night I'm going to Lewisburg, Pennsylvania.
Okay. Are you going to the new one that is there a new one there or no?
It's right now it's a maximum with a camp attached. And then they're turning the maximum into a medium. I'm going to the camp.
Nice. Okay. All right, cool. So how far is that for your family?
It's about 200 miles. It's about a 4-hour drive. I was trying to be closer. I requested to be closer, but I've talked to other people who made requests and they got sent like 8 hours away. So 4 hours is manageable for us. I'm happy that, it's somewhere that we can all my friends and family can get to without having to make, a 2-day trip, in a car or something.
Yeah. And then in 18 months, if you want to put in for a transfer, you could always play it by ear. But I don't know if everybody knows that, but in the Feds, every 18 months, I think it is, right? You could put in for a transfer.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
You know what else I'll mention too? You had mentioned kind of being athletic and working out. That was definitely something that was good for me as well. I think, if there is someone who is facing incarceration, and they're out on pretrial release like I am, having that routine of like getting up every morning and having a workout routine, that really helped me a lot with having some stability, because you're facing so much unknown. And then to know, just creating these moments of stability, something that's going to happen and that you have control over, is definitely worth doing. Like having, I guess it might, be kind of corny and to have a morning routine, but it's definitely worth it. And for me, it helped me move through. And the exercising too, just moving your body, obviously, it does help with your mental state.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And I'm just as cheesy because I say it all the time. And I think where it gets cheesy are like the gurus that want you to do 45,000 things in the morning before 5 o'clock. No, but just having something to do at certain points throughout the day gets you out of bed and it gets you moving and it releases those endorphins. So I am with you all the way. People ask me all the time, I don't understand how you do it. And my thing is working out. So having that has gotten me through. And I encourage everybody to find their thing, whatever that is. If working out, if you dread it, if you hate it, fine. Maybe you like to write. Maybe you like to sing. Maybe you like to dance. Whatever it is, find your thing and make sure you're doing it as often as you can to keep you from the depression. Awesome. That's awesome advice. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Well, you know what? And I'll close out, unless you have any more, but I'll close out with an interesting story related to working out. So, I had a morning routine and I was just doing a basic workout at home, and I never did like much cardio. So on the day of my sentencing, I was, feeling like, okay, I'm approaching my sentence that I've never really dealt with before. And this was a brand new thing for me. And I kind of had this like urge or desire to do something else that I never did before. So I woke up at 5 a.m, which is typical for me. And I rolled over to my girlfriend and I said, I'm going to go for a run. And I never like go out for a run. I've never done that before. So I got up at 5 a.m, and it was like dark out. I put like a little headlight on and I went running in the woods and through a trail that I really like. And it just really helped me mentally. It cleared my mind on that morning before sentencing. It was such a almost like meditative practice, like just running. And then now I've been running, 4 or 5 days a week since then.
Amazing. I love it. So I know you said in the beginning about your podcast and it isn't released yet. When will it be releasing? Where can we find it? Where can I send everybody to go to follow your journey?
So I have a website that's about to be out pretty soon. It's going to be preparingforfreedom.org. And the podcast is the same name, Preparing for Freedom. I don't have an exact release date for the podcast. It's going to be after my incarceration, though, for sure. But everything will be up at the website, preparingforfreedom.org. If people want to, for right now, reach out to me or connect with me, I do have a Facebook, a personal page. It's Pepe Scott Bodner. They can look there if they want. And just on a note on the podcast, I'm hoping if all works out, I'll be able to keep it going even while serving time. I'm hoping once a week I can make a phone call to somebody and they can hear that phone call where I'll actually be talking a little bit about this journey and kind of some of the skills I learned with life coaching, adding that into it as well.
Very cool. And I would love, if minutes and schedule and all of that permits, I'd love to have you back during, if we could figure that out too. So you could
absolutely, bro. Honestly, I would love to stay in touch with the goal of helping other people maintain the relationships, because that's important to me. I mean, I think there's so little information out there on relationships with an incarcerated person. And for me, you have been like a gold mine of information, and I really appreciate the work you do. You're one of the few sources I was able to find out there. So, and if there's ever a time we can somehow work together, if people have questions and they want to know, the perspective of a male who's in prison or something, I would be glad to offer that to your listeners any way I could.
Thank you. Yes, we'll work out logistics after this, but I'm sure that you're going to get flooded with questions and requests and everything. And if we stay in touch, then I'll be able to do the release and all of that stuff. So everybody, make sure you give love to Pepe in the comments below, and advice if you want to give, what helped you with your prison relationship or whatever. I'm sure he'd be more than happy, more than grateful. So thank you so much. We'll talk to you again soon.
Yeah, you know what? Can I ask you one thing?
Of course.
So I'm assuming most of the listeners know your story, most of your viewers, but some of the people who might be viewing who are friends of mine, they don't know much about your story or about Adam. Would you mind for a minute, like just sharing some of that with people that might be coming from my network?
Talk about myself? Of course I don't mind. Adam is serving a 213-year sentence in federal prison due to mandatory minimum sentencing laws. So he committed a bunch of robberies. He committed 9 robberies. He robbed actually illegal establishments. Nobody was physically hurt during the commission of his crimes, but the way that the law that they sentenced him under is written is that you have to stack it one upon each other. So you can't run the sentence concurrently where you just kind of lump them all together. You actually have to run them one after another after another. So he had a gun in his possession. It wasn't brandished. It wasn't shown. It wasn't discharged, used, nothing like that. Still wrong, still bad, still deserved to do a bunch of time. But he got 8 years for the robberies. And then for having the gun on him, they charged him under a law called 924C. For the first offense, it's 5 years, again, consecutive. So it was 8 plus 5, which is 13. And then for every charge thereafter, it was another 25 lumped on top of 25 on top of 25. So it created the 213-year sentence. And Adam deserved, again, to do time. The guideline range for his criminal history points was 0 to 20 years max he could have done for the underlying crime was 20 years. But what they do with this law, the feds come in and they dangle it and they're like, you want to cooperate or do you want a life sentence? And that's what you did. That's what they did. And he was like, I'm not going to trial. They wanted him to quote unquote snitch on people he never even met, had no idea who they were. And he was like, I'm not doing it. And so I've literally had attorneys tell me that you get punished in the United States very often for going to trial. And that's what happened to him. So he's been incarcerated for close to 20 years. It'll be 20 years in February. And in order for me to figure out how to not get bitter and how to not get jaded and to put a purpose to this, because very much like you, I am an optimist and I try to find the silver lining in everything. Otherwise, what's the point? If I'm going to live depressed every day, what's the point in going through this with him? So I looked online one day because I just felt so alone. Nobody understood me, not even my own family. And I found nothing. And the few things that I did find to support loved ones, specifically the partners of people that are incarcerated, were very living to the stigma, very glorifying criminal life, very glamorizing being with a bad boy. And I was like, I could do better. If it's not out there, then we all need to do better. I'm going to build it. And that's what happened. And I created an organization, Strong Prison Wives and Families. That was in 2011. It was a blog at first, and then social media pages. And then actually it was this YouTube channel first. And then we incorporated as a nonprofit in 2015. And now as of 2019, we have over 100,000 members, because that just shows how much of an underserved community we are and how much we need that support. So I guess in a nutshell, maybe not because I spoke a lot. That's what I do. That's my background. That's why I'm here.
And, the reason I asked is there's kind of 2 remarkable things to your story. And one is your response to everything that's going on, which has been inspirational for me. And then the second thing that I find remarkable, not in such a positive way, is the insane failure of the federal prison system to hand out a sentence as it did in the case of Adam. And it just really points to the lack of humanity and unfairness within the system. And I just wanted to, those 2 things are both remarkable, one in a positive way and one in just a disheartening way. And I just really wanted to allow people that might be coming to your channel through my network to hear your story.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Yep. And also, just to put it out there, it's been, like I said, almost 20 years. We're the closest right now that we've ever been to fighting this and getting it overturned, because last December, 2018, a law called the First Step Act, which I'm sure you're familiar with, was passed. And in that law, they said from that day it was passed forward, they're not allowed to charge 924C like that. They're supposed to charge it in the way that it was originally intended, which was you're charged in that the first time, the first case was that additional 5 years. You have to do that time. You have to get out. Then you have to be charged on another case, a second or subsequent case. And that's where the 25 should kick in. They weren't doing that. They were misapplying this law. So they said, no, that's from this day forward, but they didn't make it retroactive, meaning people who are already incarcerated from that day prior weren't going to see any relief on this. So there was a case that came through the Supreme Court that could potentially offer us some relief. And we're exploring a couple of other avenues right now that could potentially get us some relief. And of course, nothing is definitive, nothing is set in stone. There's no time frame, but the attorneys that we're working with are pretty confident. They don't know when, they don't know how long it'll take, because the wheels of justice, we all know, spin very slowly, but hopefully there will be relief in our hopefully near future.
That's amazing, and I wish you both the best with it.
Thank you. Thanks. So I don't want to keep you too long, but thank you so much. And I am sure we'll be hearing from you again soon. Best of luck to you. I know you're going to be successful. I know I'll speak to you before you go inside, but I'm sure everyone's going to send you well wishes, and I will forward those to you as well.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to be on your channel, Ro.
Of course. Of course. We'll talk soon.
Bye.
Bye.
You guys keep staying strong, keep loving strong, keep supporting one another through this journey, because you're one day closer to it all being over. And Lord knows I am too. Lots of love from my heart and Pepe's heart to all of yours. I'll see you, beautiful ladies and gentlemen, in the next one. Before you go, I see you judging me and this broken nail. Yes. Yes, yes, yes. This happened today as I was opening up a sandwich for Adam in visit. And the cop was so sweet. I was like, oh, my nail just flew off. And she's like, girl, I've seen worse things happen here. She goes, at least it wasn't your hair that flew off. Love her. What a sweetheart. I talked about her in the video that I did about the good ones, the good COs. I'll link it up there. But she was so sweet. So just one of the most easygoing cops, and just there to help. She still enforces the rules as she should, as her job, but really cool situation. So yeah, me and my 9 fingernails. We'll see you in the next one. Bye guys.